I want to thank everybody for coming, but in particular the people who came from the Central Valley, because a lot of times it's hard to leave work and it's hard to show up and be present and to express your opinions. Very much like my good friend from Irvine. I looked at this very, very carefully, and let me just say I have a lot of respect for our new senator, and she takes on very, very hard issues to try to do what's in the best interest of the community. And for me, I have spent my entire life working for the civil rights of residents in the state of California. I'm an attorney by trade, and my first job was working for California Rural Legal Assistance for Farm Workers, because I felt very strongly that their voices needed to be heard, and their conditions under which they worked were not fair. And so I've spent a lot of time talking to people, working with different groups of people to try to resolve issues we have in our society and our communities. And what's important about civil rights protection is that what you say is it doesn't matter who you are or what you think, what your religion, your color, your country of origin, your sexual preference, your gender, all of that are protected classes. And as I was looking at the discussion about the caste system, one of the things I realized is my family's originally from Mexico. And we've been here in this country about 140 years, but some of the prejudices that came with colonization have affected Mexico's and the views of people in Mexico and the views of who is more important than someone else. And I have to tell you that we have pretty rigid caste system in other countries as well. It's just not talked about. It's just the way it is, and people are treated disrespectfully based a lot on the color of their skin, or the jobs that they do, or the part of the country that they come from. So I'm very sensitive to the issue. So I'm wrapping up to say, what I believe this legislation does is it says that one of the issues that you cannot discriminate on is a caste system, and that we have to protect everybody, and that means whether it's employment or it's in education, and anything else that people that is part of their people's everyday life. We can't be prejudiced against people that might be a little bit different than us. And so I'm going to support the bill today, and I want to assure the children that we're talking about discrimination in their classrooms and in their schools that this state will do everything because of the laws on the book to make sure that discrimination does not happen. And if it does, because we know that we can't control for everything, that those children will be protected and that there will be somebody at their side that can defend their legal rights. And that's why I went to law school, and I believe very deeply in that. So thank you for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you very much. Senator Allen.
Well, I just associate myself with the comments of my colleagues. I think that it is hard to prove discrimination under our law, but I think there is a sense that we don't want people to be discriminated against on the basis of something that's an immutable characteristic that. And I think caste falls into that category. I do think that it's important, along the lines of what our senator from Irvine mentioned, is that the chair really work closely with the community to ensure that there's that some of the fears that have been expressed in the course of this discussion are really put to rest. And I think I'm not sure that folks fully understand some of the amendments that have been taken, and there's some good refutation of some of the fears and concerns that are in the analysis from the Judiciary Committee. So it's with that understanding that I'm prepared to vote for the bill today. I know this bill's got a long way to go, and there's going to be a lot of work that will continue. I guess I would love to ask the author, can you, you brought out a lot of folks today from on both sides, including many from your own district. You, would you like to speak a little bit to some of I think the truly felt fear that some folks have expressed today, that this will lead to greater discrimination against Hindu Americans and Indian Americans in general? How would you respond from your heart to those folks?
Thank you. So SB 403 does not actually contend that any South Asians are more likely to discriminate against another South Asian compared to any other group. And individuals, regardless of what section of the caste they are a part of, is also protected. That's another piece of it. And a person does not need to be a member of a caste to engage in caste-based discrimination. It could be somebody that, again, perceives your standing. And SB 403 explicitly states that caste-based discrimination is not limited to one group or people found, obviously on multiple different continents, right? We've kind of illustrated that in a little bit of the analysis as well, that caste, there's different castes, and obviously they belong to multiple different countries. It's not just South Asian or anything like that. And as an Asian American myself, I genuinely stand against Asian hate as a whole, and obviously we are working to make sure that this bill protects all people. It is an anti-discrimination policy, basically.
Yeah, it's hard to prove discrimination, we have these laws in place because we do want to ensure that people think twice before discriminating, I understand. I totally. I think the fears that have been expressed today are very honest, and I understand where they're coming from. But I wonder whether some of them are based on fear rather than the reality of what's in the bill. So, but that being said, you've certainly brought out a lot of concerns from folks, and I really do hope that the author and the committee, assuming the bill gets out today, will really work in good faith with community leaders, including some of those who've spoken out against the bill, to ensure that issues are cleared up, fears are addressed, etc.
Thank you very much. Other comments? I'll go to Senator Nilo, and then I'll go to Senator DeRosa.
This has been a very difficult bill for me to grapple with. As the author knows, we've talked about it several times. I've talked with a lot of people, personal friends, and then others that came to my office. And I fully understand and appreciate the opposition in their feeling that just the proposal of the bill is, in a way, discriminating against them. I understand why you feel that way. I think it's important to note, as Senator Wahab just said, that it isn't aimed at just one group, and the analyses that we have point out more than once that caste systems exist in a lot of areas in the world, historically and still. And so I don't look at it that way. Perhaps easy for me to say, but I don't look at it that way. The one concern I do have is that, as is stated, caste isn't fully understood in this country, and so that lack of understanding for the definition and what it is could create excessive litigation, and that does concern me. Whether that can be addressed in the eventual form of the bill, I don't know, but that is concerning. But we do have to do everything we can to keep people from being discriminated against. My last name is Italian. In Italy, it's pronounced Niello, not Nilo. And that's because when my grandfather's family emigrated here at the turn of the last century, Italians were not viewed as favored immigrants. as we have new generations of immigrants that have immigrated to this country, there has been, even though we are a nation of immigrants, every time there's a resistance to new groups coming in. And the reason it's pronounced Nilo instead of Nielo was to anglicize, quite frankly, the name. And my grandfather didn't live in Italian areas in San Francisco. And so discrimination happens, and we do have to do everything we can to protect against it. So I'm kind of echoing the comments that have been made by my colleagues, and I, by and large, agree with them, and I will be supporting the bill.
Thank you very much. Senator, please, Senator DeRosa.
Thank you very much. Lots of thoughts come to mind. I too appreciate everyone who came to express their sentiments on this bill. That is very important for democracy. That's very important in the state of California for everyone to feel the ability to speak up on whatever your opinion is, and that's really what makes this country strong. But, you know, since the founding of our country, we've had to face many issues of racism and freedoms, economic opportunity on the one hand, but yet oppressive behavior on the other hand. So I know we strive every day to address forms of discrimination. We do, and we're really proud that California is in the forefront of defending our democracy, of defending our rights, of fighting against all forms and any forms of discrimination. So we're very proud of that. We strive to do that every time an issue comes up, and it can be uncomfortable, but yet it's much better to be uncomfortable or and not ignore something that exists. So, you know, we try to protect all people's rights, whether it's gender-based, gender identity-based, race-based, ethnicity, language. We have in California hundreds of languages. We want to make sure everyone feels the freedom to speak on it. So we are very sensitive to all forms and any forms of bias, to make that straight. So on that basis, and also because I myself, being born here but of parents of Mexico, I know the kinds of subtle and overt discriminations that can take place. All this together leads me to support the bill.
Thank you very much. Senator Wilk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to align my comments, I think, with Senator Nilo. I have not ever confronted this, so it's been really hard to grapple with. I too come from immigrants. My family changed their name at Ellis Island when they came over to avoid discrimination. And talking with the opponents, the one thing I want you to work on moving forward that really resonates with me, and again, because I'm also concerned about lawsuits as well, is nailing down what is going to be the legal definition of caste, because that's where I think we could have some really adverse effects. But in America, we're supposed to all be created equal opportunity. So I'm going to support your bill today, but I would hope that you work on that and tighten that up for everybody's protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank everyone for making such a showing of their democratic voice. I was between committees, but I had every single person in this room's testimony in my ear all morning, seeing the variety, not just of views, but the diversity in the room, and we do feel you and hear you. I also want to appreciate this author for coming into the Senate unabashedly and being herself right out the gates, and doing so in a way that is takes a bit of bravery, especially when there's such intensity. I've heard your responses to the members' questions, I was wrestling with some of the technical issues, the constitutional questions. I want to express that I was moved by your response, but also a key piece of the analysis points out the Atkins legislation from a few years back that brought sexual orientation into protected class status under the Unruh Civil Rights Act. And I thought, the fear, the concern in this room and around this bill that there will somehow be a wave of reverse discrimination, that people will sort of turn on each other. This will trigger a suspicion or a division somehow within South Asian community writ large, but even within the Hindu community itself. That risk, I think, is mitigated by the proof in the pudding of how the Atkins bill has been implemented. That it is an immutable characteristic. Your sexual orientation, gender identity, as you wish to express it, that those are not things you can necessarily tell from looking at a person. To say, just like I'm Jewish, you could look at me and say, you don't look Jewish. You could say to somebody, you don't look gay. But those are immutable characteristics, right, that can't be sort of seen just by the eye. And it is illegal under California law to discriminate against people based on those characteristics and those classes. So, for instance, I observe at an Orthodox synagogue. I observe the Sabbath. I adhere to sort of stricter forms of Judaism than others. You couldn't, as one Jew, discriminate against another Jew by saying, if you're not Orthodox, you can't come into this bar. You can't come into this room. You can't seek employment if you're not of a certain religiosity. That's illegal. That has not triggered a sort of intercommunal battles and a sort of attacks and a sort of reverse discrimination in any perceptible way. The same within the LGBTQ community. Because the Atkins bill is now law, has not then triggered a whole wave of sort of this reverse discrimination. We've actually seen no evidence of that I can tell. So within that precedent that we've set through our own civil rights legislation and the sort of evolving nature of the doctrine, this seems like an idea that time has come and that I hope in the coming years, should this become law, that those fears will sort of be evaded just by the reality that this is a good protection for those who are targeted now, but this is not an invasion of those rights or sort of triggering of any animosity is from somewhere else. It's not from within this law. There are tensions out there, and we know they go all over the world, and they go to continents that aren't even this one, and they're deep, and they can get very ugly. But this is not that bill, and this is not the reason for that. And to imply that, I think, impugns the spirit of this bill, and I think that's why I'm going to be supporting it today. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Everyone has spoken. Is there a last question or comment before I go to the author for a close? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
Thank you. I do want to thank every single supporter of SB 403 who is here today and who testified via teleconference. I also want to thank the opposition for just engaging in the democratic process. Everyone that spoke, they are risking more than you can imagine being here to stand up for themselves and the countless community members who fear for their own safety. With the passage of SB 403, each of you that vote aye will be expanding the freedoms that this country has promised. I think each and every one of you guys spoke to that. Each of you will be voting to enhance our civil rights guaranteed to all. And each of you will break the invisible chains that have dragged the human spirit and potential of millions of people since birth across the world. The world is watching, and I will say that this will have a positive effect where other places can potentially pursue this and expand the rights of others. So with that said, again, I want to thank this committee. I want to thank everybody who spoke and who worked on this bill. I want to thank the fact that this is a bipartisan effort, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone that wishes to make a motion here? Motion by Caballero. we please read the motion and call the roll?
This is file item number 1, SB 403 by Senator Wahab. The motion is to pass the Senate Appropriations. Umberg, Wilk,
Aye.
Wilk, I, Allen, Allen, I, Ashby, Caballero,
Aye.
Caballero, I, Durazo,
Aye.
Durazo, I, Laird,
Aye.
Laird, I, Min, Min, I, Nilo, Nilo, I, Stern, Stern, I, Wiener.
We have 8 votes in favor. There are 11 committee members. 3 are out of the room. We will put the bill on call and lift the call later when they return. So before I turn the gavel back to Vice Chair Wilk, I'm going to give everybody a minute to leave the room, and then I'm sure we'll move to the next item. Thanks, everybody, for participating in what was an animated discussion.
All righty. Welcome back here. So, I don't have a script.
Item 2.
Well, I know that, but I don't know what the recommendation is. Okay, item number 2, SB 399, and the recommendation is due pass to Senate Appropriations Committee. With that, Senator Wahab, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, and staff, and members of the public. I'm here to present SB 399, which would prevent employers from coercing workers into listening to their views on political or religious issues. SB 399 simply clarifies that workers have the freedom to refuse to attend mandatory meetings or listen to communications in which their employer is expressing their personal views on religious or political matters, including support or opposition of political parties or unions. These meetings are often referred to as captive audience meetings because, although not job-related, workers are not permitted to leave or not attend without facing discipline or other adverse action. In many workplaces, employees are at will and can be fired at any time for almost any reason, therefore providing employers with tremendous power to pressure workers to do as they say. Imagine that you are at work and your boss calls you into a mandatory all-staff meeting. At the meeting, the boss asks you to vote for a proposition that you oppose. You try to leave but are told you would be written up and possibly fired if you leave. This is what workers are facing on the job today. California has long prided itself as a sanctuary for workers regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or political leaning. Therefore, in keeping with that tradition, it is important that workers of all religions and political perspectives are free to go to work without feeling coerced into listening to the political or religious leanings of their employer against their will. This bill has exemptions to ensure that employers can communicate information they're required by law to provide or any information that is necessary for workers to perform their job duties. Likewise, nothing in SB 399 prevents employers from communicating their personal political or religious beliefs to their workers. It simply clarifies they cannot require workers to attend meetings to discuss religious or political matters that are not germane to the work they do. As SB 399 moves forward, the bill's sponsors and I look forward to working with relevant stakeholders in opposition to address their concerns. With me in person to testify today is Darrow Pierce, a worker at the Starbucks here in Sacramento, and Sarah Phlox on behalf of California Labor Federation.
All right, each speaker gets 2 minutes apiece.
Good morning. My name is Darrow Pierce, and I've been a barista at Starbucks for over 2 years here in Sacramento. I'm at 19th and J now, but some of you may recognize me from 10th and L. My coworkers and I started organizing in January to form a union to improve the most basic working conditions in our store. When management found out we were organizing, they began to overstep that protected right by holding meetings to push Starbucks' corporate message that a no vote to unions is our best option. This same tactic, called captive audience meetings, was also used heavily at the 7th and K Starbucks location. Starbucks often uses this tactic in stores across the country wherever baristas are organizing to collectively improve our conditions. This creates a narrative that paints unions as an unequivocally bad decision that could do nothing but hurt us. We were told that if we unionized, we could lose our current benefits, managers wouldn't be able to help us on the floor, and that we would no longer be able to pick up shifts at other chain locations. They're called captive audience meetings because we don't feel we're free to leave or to not listen. The meetings were intimidating and made our complex job even harder because while trying to mentally keep track of the myriad tasks that make up our day, we were simultaneously force-fed distracting and disturbing misinformation as a scare tactic. It was especially discouraging that management coerced our shift supervisors, who we have to see and work with every day, into holding these meetings instead of corporate representatives. This quickly led to shift supervisors having free rein to outright bully any pro-union employee with no consequences. It is demoralizing knowing your employer is actively trying to cheat you out of having a safe, functional workplace, and there's nothing you can do about it. We aren't asking for the sun and the moon. We're asking for basic protections like security cameras for safety and enough regular hours to qualify for healthcare. I'm here today to ask for your support in Senate Bill 399. It would prohibit employers from requiring workers like myself to attend these coercive captive audience meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Phlox, California Labor Federation, a co-sponsor of the bill. In 2019, Shell Oil coerced workers to attend a Trump re-election rally. In 2020, Uber required drivers, before they could log on to the app to work, to watch a Yes on Prop 22 video. These are just a few examples of politics permeating the workplace in a coercive manner. SB 399 is a very simple fix to address this. It simply says employers cannot coerce, intimidate, or bully workers into listening to their views on politics and religion that are not related to their job. Now, the opposition is going to come up and say that this bill is unconstitutional, that it violates the First Amendment. But this has nothing to do with employers' free speech. It does not infringe upon speech. What it does is when speech crosses over into coercive conduct, that is what the bill regulates, is conduct. And even under the First Amendment, the Supreme Court has held that no person has the right to press even good ideas onto an unwilling listener, someone who is unable to decline receiving that message. There's clearly the ability for states to regulate in this area and protect workers from coercive conduct, while preserving employers' free speech to talk about anything they want as long as it's not mandatory. They're also going to raise preemption under the National Labor Relations Act. This bill clearly falls within the two exemptions. One, which is to regulate and for the state to regulate and set minimum standards, which you all do every day, voting on minimum wage, overtime, and the many other bills that come before this body. And the other is on very deeply rooted and felt local issues. And California has a strong history of doing this in protecting employees' ability to be involved in politics outside of work. And that is evidenced in Labor Code 1101 and 1102. So this is a very simple bill, a fix to the problem of
forced communication in the workplace, and we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Me Too's in support of the bill?
Mr. Chair and members, Matt Broad here on behalf of the Teamsters, co-sponsors of the bill, as well as Unite